Good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to start by thanking the Council of Competitiveness because you brought us together. We're old buddies now. We have been doing that for some time. And last month, Wes was at Northeastern University, and we had a dialogue like that. So, you know, we want to talk about the skills gap. And we have tons of surveys to share with you. But the surveys are an indication, and they don't provide you with the solution. So let's start by discussing some of the surveys that the Business Roundtable has been doing. Actually, you have been leading those. So give us a flavor, Wes, of what you found out.
So the Business Roundtable just recently did a survey of its members, and not surprising because I think the survey results were quite similar to other surveys that the Chamber has done, as well as other independent sort of non-business organizations. And I would say that there are some elements of the survey results that you could predict, but there were also some interesting insights. Some of the more predictable survey results were the number of companies, and in our case it was greater than 80%, that cited a significant skills shortage in their ability to actually find the talent they need and to support the business objectives that they had. And not surprisingly as well, much of that skills shortage goes to the STEM disciplines. And just about every survey you see, you get that sort of flavor. And STEM is a big category. I think we all often think of the engineering shortage that we hear so much about. But interestingly in ours, the mathematics part of it and the basic sciences part of it were identified as shortages as well. In addition to the disciplines, though, some of the other feedback that we got in the survey that I thought was particularly insightful was the identification of some broader sort of general applied skills that, from a business perspective, we all look for and we try and keep track of how well we're doing. Things like critical thinking, the ability to tackle a problem and really dive into it and test a lot of different perspectives and come up with innovative and different perspectives. Cognitive flexibility was another category that we saw identified by many, many businesses. And again, I think is a reflection of the pace of change that we have in the business environment, in fact, in the world around us. So it was, for me, a confirming survey of many of the things that I've seen in other surveys, but it was insightful in some areas that I don't think it quite got the attention.
So let me take the compliment set. Yeah. We just surveyed the college students nationwide. We didn't do it ourselves. We commissioned a firm to do it. And what we found is that only 14% of the students feel they are ready for the new world, for the AI world, for intelligent systems, for the tech revolution that they know is going to hit them. And you know, they know that the jobs are going to be redefined. So it's interesting to compare the employers and at the same time the learners. The employers keep saying, you know, colleges and universities are not doing a good job. The college students, only 14% feel that they're getting ready for that. So clearly we need to do something together about it, and that's why we're here today.
It is.
We're here to talk about partnership. We're here to talk about what can be done. So starting with you, Wes, you have been working with many universities. You have been partnering with universities. We have been partnering with universities. What do you look for in the partnership?
Yeah. So, you know, there's been a model out there for a long time that businesses utilized in working with universities that has served some of the interest of business, but I think there's been a broader awakening that we need to develop some very, very different models. You know, the older model was sort of a combination of obviously building good partnerships with the career office because we want to make sure that we're there and are represented well and branded well when it comes to the recruiting, but also sponsoring research and development was sort of a traditional model. And oftentimes it was just straight old philanthropic giving, which is good. All those things are really good.
We like it too.
And it's important that we continue to do those things. But we've all realized it's just not enough.
Absolutely.
It's not solving the problems that we're seeing. And I have to give a lot of credit to the Business Higher Education Forum, and we together are members of BHEF and have been for some time. A number of years ago, through a series of discussions just like this, where we continued to identify these types of problems, we decided to pilot some different approaches. and test what would work and what would not work. And we have found some models, and we've applied it now both in the fields of cybersecurity and in the field of data analytics in a number of university settings around the country. And to your question about, okay, what are we looking for? What works? First off, you have to have a partnership approach, and it has to work both ways. The university has to be open to engaging with business in a little bit of a different manner, and business has to be open to changing its model of engagement. And what's been working in these new models has been a much deeper level of collaboration. It goes all the way, in many cases, to a co-development of curriculum, where business makes an investment and the university makes an investment, and faculty comes together with employees of the business to define what some of the curriculum components need to be to better prepare the students. Now, this isn't a training program, and I want to be careful about that up front, because oftentimes people hear this description and they think, okay, we're turning university into training. And that is not the intent at all. It has to be education, and it has to be broad education, because directly to the point that you were raising regarding the feedback from students, we want students not just trained for the one instant thing to come into business. We want them to work for us over the course of a lifetime, continue to grow, and they need that broad education to start with to have that capacity to grow. That said, there are some basic things that they need today to get started that perhaps they did not need some years ago. And this model of engaging more closely with business around the notion of developing curriculum, how we do things like internships and co-op program. And Northeastern is really, from my perspective, a world leader in defining how to have co-op programs be most effective. But actually engaging in the design and development, and oh, by the way, in the funding of those things. Business has to step up and work together with the universities so that these things are supportable. None of these things are inexpensive. So it, I think, is a little bit of a broader awakening across the business community that we can't simply stand by and conduct our surveys and complain. We need to be engaged and be a part of the solution. And we look for universities like Northeastern that are eager to partner and are eager actually to help us learn about what works and what doesn't work, because universities like Northeastern bring so much to that engagement.
Well, thank you, Wes. So when I talk to my colleagues in higher education, there is clearly in a big unease about, I mean, we don't want you to come and talk to us about how to shape a curriculum.
Right.
However, at the same time, you know, when we get together with our employers and we sit down, we have 3,000 employers working with us, and because we send our students for 6 months and on longer-term internships called co-ops. When we sit down with them and we look at the type of person that are looking for, it is clear that we have to change the way we're providing education. So what we are hearing from our employers is very simple. We need you to get our learners, our students, ready for the new economy. What does it mean? There is a new literacy. We all know about it. They need to know coding. Coding will become like typewriting.
It is.
They need to know about beyond the tech literacy, data analytics, big data. They need to know about the human interaction, what I call the human literacy. And you know, you are here as leaders. You didn't become leaders because you were great engineers only, but because you...
That does help, by the way, though.
Yeah, that's a sine qua non, especially for you, Wes. But because essentially you knew how to lead people, how to motivate people, how to understand people. And that's what we are not doing well enough of. The second aspect that I want to discuss with you, Wes, here, is that I am afraid that we in higher education are giving up an enormous opportunity. We are in the middle of an enormous revolution. There are new ideas, there are new jobs that are coming to the fore, other jobs are becoming obsolete. And people have to retool. People have to refine what they do. The notion of lifelong learning is with us. Now, higher education looked at lifelong learning as something very peripheral. We don't want to touch it much because we want to focus on the 18 to 22 undergrads. We want to do research and PhD. But don't talk to me about lifelong learning. This will bring down the brand. In fact, we're becoming like the railway industry. I hope there is no one here from Amtrak. The railway industry missed the transportation revolution because they define themselves as being in the railway industry and not in the transportation industry. And I think that's what's happening to us in higher education. We are not thinking of ourselves as being in the lifelong learning mission. So when I talk to you, Wes, I ask you, you have employees, you are recruiting employees. You cannot say to them, you are set once and for all in your life. No. So what do you look for? Yes. You must have extensive training, correct?
Absolutely.
To help them retool, to help them get into new fields. Well, I have to tell you, every time a company tells me that they have set up an educational program, it's a failure of higher education. Because higher education has to do it. So what do you look for in lifelong learning?
Well, let me say a couple of things. One, most companies don't want to be in the education business. That's not what we do as our primary business. But most of us are. In fact, in the survey that we did in the Business Roundtable, on average, across the companies that we surveyed, on average, companies were spending about $80 million apiece on continuous education of their employees, much of which were internal investments, because they didn't have these partnerships. They didn't have this capacity to work with the universities on this continuous lifelong training. So we look for universities that have that flexibility to deal with beyond the 22-year-old age point or the PhD age point, and engage with us in the development of programs that our employees can benefit from. Because despite what may sound like a criticism of higher education, let me say up front, I am a strong believer in the United States. We continue to have the very best higher education system that exists on the globe. So what we're talking about here is improving something that's great, but we have to improve it because our needs for this, whether we're talking about the economic security of our country or from the optic of my company, the national security of our country, we critically depend on the quality of higher education and the engagement of higher education.
Absolutely.
So these partnerships really are opportunities for us to connect in a deeper way, a more meaningful way, and are as a real opportunity, not just at a company level, it comes down to the employee level. And this means a great deal actually to employees.
And when we started talking about those partnerships and those opportunities, it led us to rethink our own model. So for instance, when you work with people who are long on experience and short on time, namely the professionals who are already in the field, you cannot tell them, come and spend 2 years with me.
Oh, no.
No one has the time. So, universities have to move into the short, what sometimes people call the boot camps. Actually, you know what happened? There are companies that started boot camps in coding. I mean, why are they doing that? They are doing that because there is an enormous need. Now the need will be fulfilled. But in terms of data analytics, we started a boot camp. That was a first for us at Northeastern. And I think we were one of the first, maybe the first university to have done it, because we had to relearn that, if you want to meet the need, you have to meet it based on the terms of the company or the people who want to learn about that. Come here for a certain time, whether you are in the company or whether you are with us, it doesn't matter, but you don't have time. We're going to provide it around 8 weeks. Similarly, we have to devise new curricula. You said, when we talk in higher education about sitting down with an employer to look at curricula, forget it. That's unacceptable. However, we have to do it because we have to learn what the needs are. So for instance, we have an enormous shortage in the nation in terms of, we talked about data analytics, cybersecurity, you and I discussed that, computer science. So can we create new pipelines for computer science? We sat down with companies in Seattle, with Amazon and others. And then we took students who finished a BS degree in the nation, and they gave them long-term co-ops, those internships. And then we gave them a master's in computer science over the period where they are there. Now, those students are coming with a background in physics, with a background in math, with a background in economics, but they are retooling. Now, for us, we had to relearn. So a master's in X doesn't require a BA in the same field. Mm-hmm. So it's a learning process for higher education. I agree with you, Wes. We have the best educational system in the nation. But because we have it, we cannot be complacent. And that's important.
I think there is another dimension to this, too, that goes to the heart of the pace of technology and the pace of business growth that we all expect to see and want to see as we go forward. And that's around innovation and the way that we approach that from an educational perspective. You know, long gone are the days when innovation was the product of single individuals. In most enterprises today, and I think this occurs in universities as well, innovation is the product of groups of people coming together. And one thing that universities have been doing, I think, well for some period of time, is working hard to develop that teamwork approach as students come through university. But as we see folks progress into business and into the work environment, oftentimes the discipline within which they were educated becomes the stovepipe within which Absolutely. They want to work. And I know in our company and in many companies like ours, innovation is occurring most quickly at the boundaries of the disciplines, not solely within the disciplines. And as we go forward, I think that's only going to accelerate. And what better place for people to learn that opportunity and learn how to engage in that way than in universities. Absolutely. And in fact, universities, I think, are leading the way in many respects in the way they do research, but bringing with that the way they teach and the way they engage students, even at the undergraduate level, in the innovative ecosystem that needs to get created both within universities and within companies, I think is another opportunity still before us.
I agree. I mean, my colleagues in the previous session talked about the importance of fundamental research, and we all believe in that. Yeah. There is also an additional aspect that we have to be aware of. You know, when we look at research in higher education, the most important factor in this research is the doctoral student, the people who are going for a PhD. Now, you know how we evaluate the programs, the PhD programs in higher education. We evaluate them by the number of PhD students who are placed in research universities. So if I place one of my PhD students at your company,
we like it.
And you like it, but you know, it's not viewed
right.
as a plus, which is insane. So we need to start thinking beyond that. We also need to, you know, there are things at, you know, all the innovation, as you said, is happening at the intersection.
It is.
But the intersection of not only disciplines, but the intersection of what is happening in universities and what is happening right. in tech companies like yours. Yes. So why don't we start thinking about what we call experiential PhD programs, where we have co-directors?
Yes.
You know, you have first-rate researchers. We have first-rate researchers. They can come together, co-direct. Let me go a step further. How many universities have companies that have labs embedded in those universities? Very few. We don't even have good protocols for that. We can do it. So those partnerships that we are talking about excite us a lot. But also at the same time, we need to start doing more of them in order to be comfortable with each other.
We do.
It's not enough to talk about the need for partnerships. We need to find a way to make it the default case, whereas now it is the exception. I want to ask you about something else. You came to Northeastern, you talked to the students, you talked to the faculty, you talked to the staff, you talked to the community, and you spent 10 minutes talking about diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
And as something, as a dimension that is very important for you and for the workforce. Tell us why.
Well, it's certainly something that we've seen in action in our company. If you think about the work that we do, you know, we are a company of about 65,000 people, and about half of our employees are degreed scientists, engineers, mathematicians, technologists of one form or another. And the language is innovation and change, and how do you look at problems through different lenses. We do best, and we measure this, and we can see it in our company. We do best when our teams are diverse, when those teams are operating in a very inclusive environment where all the ideas are freely put on the table, and when there's a high regard not only for all of the individuals on a personal basis, but a high regard for the way in which everyone can work together and get things done. So this isn't something theoretical for us. This is tangible, and it is a powerful outcome for us. So there is a strong, strong focus within our company to not only talk about this from the top levels of the organization, we measure it. We measure it across our enterprise, and we see the tangible benefits from it. So I'm a very strong proponent for the benefit, the business benefit of really working to make sure that we're doing the right things on diversity and inclusion. And when it comes to recruiting, the graduates, as we were saying, are incredibly smart. And we find that they tend to look for environments that are far more inclusive, that give them the comfort that they're going to be able to put on the table their ideas, their views, and to be who they are.
That's another aspect of the partnerships that we didn't discuss yet.
It is.
The pipeline is not sufficient.
Yeah.
We have to work together to increase this pipeline in K through 12 by looking also at community colleges, by looking at historically black colleges and putting partnerships together. We haven't done enough of that. So, this mandate is going to force us in higher education and in industry to work together to increase this pipeline.
Absolutely.
And this is something that is very exciting. Frankly, it hasn't been done enough yet. We have examples here and there, but that's an opportunity.
Yes.
Now, you and I also discussed the cultural agility. We need people who are culturally agile, who are at ease with not only different cultures in the United States, but also on a global scale. How do you look at that?
Well, I see it as, just as I've talked about diversity, from our perspective, understanding a more global view and being comfortable operating around the globe is a key part of the success of any modern enterprise. And you might say, well, a defense company, isn't that primarily domestic focus? No, actually, most of the companies in our industry are global companies of necessity. We operate with our allies around the globe. And when you're talking about national security, that's a very sovereign, local perspective oftentimes. And really being comfortable operating on a global basis is critical. And that's why universities that bring that view, I think, have a leg up. The universities that really encourage their students to engage in that more global perspective and to learn, to have some meaningful learning in that regard, whether it's the intersections with students from other countries on the campus or the international opportunities that are afforded to them. It's a great thing about your co-op program, by the way, that you afford your co-op students not just opportunities in the US, but around the globe. And I think it really does produce graduates who step into the workforce with a broader perspective than they might otherwise have.
From this perspective, we have over 5 million students in colleges and universities. If I tell you how many go overseas, have an overseas experience, is less than 500,000. So we have a deficit and we have an opportunity there. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to give our students, and actually we have an obligation to give our students a global experience because we are working and competing on a global level.
Absolutely we are.
As a matter of fact, let me give you the example of GE. If by the age of 26 at GE you don't have a global experience, it's going to be very difficult for you to grow. So imagine the situation where they are coming by, they finish by the age of 24. If they have a master's or more, then they go to work, they don't have a global experience, so what happens? That's a deficit. We need to work on that. And that's why, Wes and I are very excited about being together and building those partnerships and those opportunities. Let me go to something, I want to address one more item. When we look at talents, one of the issues is obviously talent retention. How do you build talent retention?
So it is a challenge. And in today's environment, where there are skill shortages, as we said earlier, and in particular fields, whether we're talking about those who are great computer scientists or data analysis, or if you're talking in the world of artificial intelligence, a whole variety of fields, there is extreme competition. And what we have found, and I think I can speak broadly for our industry, is companies that are able to connect the mission of the enterprise to the work that their employees are doing are far more successful than others where it is a job. Clearly in our space, national security, global security is a mission that appeals to many, and we generally find if we can keep our new hires, the first few years they tend to stay with us for a career. And sometimes staying with us means staying in our industry. People move around a little bit within the industry, and that's fine. But it's that deep connection to a view that what you're doing is meaningful. Yeah. And we find in interviewing on campus that students really want to understand that as much as they do the particulars of the job that you might be speaking to them about. They also are looking for companies that have a view of their corporate responsibility. And I enjoy getting out and interviewing students on campus, and have been pleasantly surprised by the number of students who have actually looked to see, do you have a corporate social responsibility report? And what does it say? Yeah. And that's just a broader view that I think many young people are bringing to their career decisions than certainly at the time when I graduated from college.
There is another dimension. I agree 100% with what you said. Actually, when you talk to the students, clearly they resonated with that. There is another dimension. Is the company investing in me? Because I know I have to invest in the company. And that's where the lifelong learning is important. We worked, for instance, with IBM. We work with IBM here in India, in China, et cetera, to train their executives. What do they see? Why are they doing it? It grows the fidelity to the place. Retention increases. So you see, we are now in a situation where higher education has an enormous opportunity to move into lifelong learning. But once we move into lifelong learning, we have to do it with you. We cannot be oblivious of reality. We have been oblivious of reality because we have been so good. But we can't afford to remain oblivious, and that's our opportunity. Last word for you, sir.
Business, step up. We have a responsibility to higher education. We need to see that we are a part of the solution. We can no longer stand on the sidelines and criticize the outcomes. We have a responsibility to take a role in creating the products that we need to make sure that our economy is going to continue to be successful.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.